This place wants us dead.
What could have done that?
There must be a bear.
A bear did that.
We found only one set of prints. Large, 20 inches across.
I do not believe it is an animal we battle.
Not a man, not a bear. Then what?
It's the ice, Georgie. It's only the ice.
Welcome to Ice Cold, the Double P Podcast Network's looks at AMC's The Terror. My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. This week, my normal co-host Catfish is out. Work pulled him up north, so we pulled in a true superstar, somebody who I really have to say, and this is difficult to say, somebody who's got turmoil all over himself.
Hey!
It's Mork. Mork, how you doing?
Oh, Bubba, I am fantastic. This is such a good show, and I have been watching. I have not read the book, although I still do have a copy of Catfish's book. I hope he doesn't hear this, but I will give it back to him.
All right.
No, but this is a great show. This is probably my favorite episode of it. If people want to, they can hit me up on Twitter at Extraordinary. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the ultimate R.
Well, let's get to it.
Yeah, this was a ton of fun.
We're covering episode 6 of season 1, entitled A Mercy. What is your ranking out of 10, Mork?
I gotta go hard. I gotta go strong.
Hard? Uh-oh.
Yeah. I'm going 10 double C's.
Double C's?
Cryogenic carnivals.
Man.
Yeah.
Would you attend that carnival? If you got the Evite, do you say, coming? What do you say?
Yeah, I would definitely, I would reply. I'd see who else was, going. I'd reply as maybe and see who else was going. There's a couple of tiny little things that I might quibble with.
Okay.
But it was tense. It was interesting. It got crazy. It got a little scary. I jumped into your arms 3 or 4 times. It's a bit more, I'm going to say, straightforward than some of the other shows that we yak about on the podcast.
More just a year ago at this time, we were covering Twin Peaks, The Gifted and the Damned is the name of that podcast, the Twin Peaks Returned podcast. But this is straightforward, but you say straightforward. We had a crazy episode with a guy we've been calling Dr. A-hole, but his real name is Dr. Stanley.
Mm-hmm. Well, now I think his new name is Dr. Stanley Steamer.
Oh. Dr. Stanley Steamer.
For reasons that will become clear if you haven't seen the episode. But holy cow.
Holy cow. Yeah, this is not quite straightforward in my saying. I feel bad doing it, but my ranking will not be 10 out of 10 like yours. What? I am going to only give this 7 double M's.
Double M's?
Out of 10. Well, double M's, that's when you have monkeys murdered. There's always a clue. Specifically, this lead food we've had him eat.
Specifically, that was murder.
Pour one out for Jacko. He took one for the team.
Thank you, Jacko.
And he didn't go quietly into that good night. He screeched and hollered like there's no hollering. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Good sir sent him to the good night. 7 sounds pretty rough, I got to say, because this is some great TV we're watching here.
It is.
What's your problem, Bubba?
Listeners, if you disagree with my 7 out of 10,
disagree.
Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural. Facebook.com/double P podcast. Go there. Listeners, I keep saying it for one reason only. I need you to like the page. We need you to follow the page. We do all these podcasts. The only reason we do them is because we love our double L's.
Double L's.
Loyal listeners who give us such great feedback. At the end of today's podcast, we're going to be getting to some great feedback from Vernon Wright, Matt Foster, Susan Dunkel. If I mispronounce these, I apologize. Agrippa, Lariat, 1980, Mike R. She Can Do It, Morgan, Keon, Bucket O'Lard, Bo, Maestro 4207, Frank Dodd, all these people, not only do they give us feedback, I'm calling them part of the feedback team. So we're going to get to all your wonderful feedback in a bit as we break down this episode. But please do it on the Facebook page. It's just easier to start the conversations there. And thank you guys so much for downloading and listening and giving us feedback. Absolutely. I only went 7 out of 10 because this is terrible to say, and I just am trying to be honest. as great as this episode was, and that closing tenseness, the mounting dread was so wonderful in this episode. But I mentioned that I've read the book. It was a decade ago. I can't remember too much specific things about it. I do know where the story is taking us. But there were two, I call them set pieces, that I just loved so much from the books. One was last week with Blanky escaping Tuunbaq. The other set piece I just remember and loved so much in the book was this carnival. As great as this carnival was on the show, there were certain things about it in the book that I was expecting, and when they didn't happen, that hurt me a little bit. But once again, who cares what we think?
Well,
Give us some feedback and let us know how you think, listeners.
Yeah, that is definitely far more important, but man, that book must be amazing. And I do have the book, and I've been making up excuses to not give it back to Catfish. I've been giving him back random, like, kitchen items.
Anything you have around.
Oh, here's that blender. Yeah. No, don't worry about the book. So I'm planning on reading it, and I will. And this, you guys have chatted about this a little bit before, but this is only going to be one season, 10 episodes.
On this story. Right, on this story. The AMC might do another story, certainly most likely will do another story that covers another 10 episodes, because this is getting very good ratings for today's 1,000 choices out there to watch. Mm-hmm. And so it's been getting very good ratings here in the United States. Hopefully it sold well around the world, and so we'll see. We're going to break down the episode like we usually do, but Mork, right now, I just want to ask a couple of questions at the top.
Okay.
We've talked about Bubba's boat and who I want on my crew. Catfish has his own cruise. Our loyal listener, Nathan Dockin, has created the Dockin Diggy, where he lists all the people he wants on his team.
Yes.
Are there any of these characters, and it's tough to remember their names, are there any of these characters you want to get on Mork's motorboat?
Oh, man. Is Sir John's leg a choice? Is that available?
It got buried at sea, I think.
Okay.
R.I.P. leg.
Well, I don't know who's available. I mean, there's some winners out there. I mean, I would definitely like the guy who, as you say, went to the barber and said everything off the top.
This poor Royal Marine without a skull. Come on.
The poor Marine. I would want, because the first thing I would want someone to push into Tuunbaq's mouth.
Okay. Well, he could do that. This poor guy could do that.
Yeah. The leg could do that. Maybe Jacko the monkey. And frankly, if we go cannibal, then they're already dead. It's an easier decision. Anyway,
if you go cannibal,
what, Stanley Steamer?
Stanley Steamer, right? He's already pre-cooked.
He's pre-cooked. He's jerky of a jerk.
Okay, now listeners, if somehow you're new to the ice cold Double P podcast take on the terror, know that we go ridiculously silly, somehow trying to lighten the mood of this incredibly impressive, terrible things happening to our friends on these boats.
We like to have as much fun as they're having when sort of off camera. The last 2 weeks, we jumped ahead 2 weeks since Blanky lost his leg.
We did.
2 weeks. They were having so much fun. They had skee ball set up. They were doing impressions.
They were out playing soccer on the ice again.
It was great. It was beautiful. So,
So we apologize if you're thinking, how can these guys make such bad groaning jokes when these poor guys are suffering so much? We're really just trying to keep it light and fun.
Because I can't speak for you, but this show actually does scare me.
Oh yeah.
And I get more dread. I don't know about you, and I don't want to go off on a crazy tangent here, although that is kind of my specialty. But horror movies don't really scare me.
Okay.
But a lot of Twin Peaks, or original series, some of the way that was shot, this certainly does. Television somehow, when I'm alone in a dark room at Bubba's house, it's very scary, people. It's very, very scary.
Yeah, much mounting dread. And I got some scares too, even in this episode. Final thing before we jump into the episode and break it down. What they are proposing is to walk 800 miles across this ice pack, across this frozen land, to theoretically where they're going to find some people to help them.
All right. So it's like going from one end of the grove to the other?
Right here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you can't take the trolley.
No trolley.
But let me say that if you're having a hard time imagining 800 miles, I just went on Google Maps. It's not always perfect, but that would be like walking from New York to Atlanta, Georgia.
That's like a 2-hour flight. That's not a big deal.
Walking it. You're dragging all your food, all your supplies, your tents. It's freezing cold still, even if you start walking in like April. It's still going to be brutal.
It's rough.
Our Double L loyal listeners in Europe, that would be the equivalent of like walking from Paris to Rome. We're here in Los Angeles. I was trying to find a good city that everybody had heard of about 800 miles away, and the only direction I could go was east, and so it would be like walking from Los Angeles to Albuquerque. Oh,
Who wants to go to Albuquerque?
hey, all our listeners in Albuquerque, go to the Facebook page and tell Mork why
Mork.
your turquoise city is so beautiful.
It is beautiful, but mainly because of the meth. Let's be honest.
Because she has her own little kind of side story before she rejoins the main plot, I thought we could start breaking down the episode just by looking at the two scenes of Lady Silence, and now that name's going to be very literal.
Yeah.
Lady Silence out on the ice. The first scene, we see her getting a seal. She's getting back the food she likes, the food she enjoys. And to be honest, after all that lead poison food, certainly the better thing to eat is seal meat.
Absolutely.
Then the second scene, when she's out on the ice, oh man, how did you feel, Mork, when Lady Silence is singing, she's been singing her song, and you suddenly realize she is trying to communicate with Tuunbaq. As my father's child, accept me in his place, she's saying. The closed caption tells us, you cannot be without a shaman so long. That is not the way. And then the growl happens. Oh my God, this was tense.
Yeah.
This was frightening. And perhaps not only frightening, it ends horrifically with her taking a knife to her own tongue.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tuunbaq he's watching the whole thing. Now, you guys were chatting about this in terms of the look of Tuunbaq and the CGI and all that. I'll jump on that a little bit. Just obviously, one of the producers of the show is Ridley Scott, who who made Alien, where one of the way you don't really see the whole alien until the very, very end. Spoiler alert! It's 40 years old, people, but they hide that, and they're obviously not doing that. But one thing, looking at it, and I don't know how close he's supposed to be, but he doesn't look as big as we've
now
seen
in
him
this
before.
shot.
So I don't know if he's just standing 30 feet in the background or because he's like, I don't want her to cut out my tongue, or he shapeshifts or something. I don't know.
Last week, Blanky, when he was trying to decode her using the term Tuunbaq, he said it was like a spirit disguised in animal clothing. And I've had this discussion online with some people. Once again, this is a double B book bias I have from reading it. I really did imagine from reading the book that Tuunbaq, even his head kind of looked like a normal polar bear's head, but he had this elongated neck and he was just bigger, and his his jaws would have been fiercer in this thing.
Yeah.
But this Tuunbaq don't look like no polar bear. He looks a bit like Dr. Stanley Steamer after he got roasted. I mean, this is not a... Tuunbaq would be saying...
Put some Noxzema on Stanley Steamer and you look like Tuunbaq.
I mean, he's like, get me from my good side, and you're like, okay, go out in the ice 100 yards. That's where you look the best from.
Now, is there anyone else she could have made a better deal with? Are there, maybe there's 5 or 6 polar bears who she could team up with, or a couple of really big seals? I mean, I don't know. I would have definitely... We all talk about our collective lack of moral character here at the Double P Podcast Network. I would have tried to trick Tuunbaq. I would have tried to trick him. I would have...
Yeah?
Because obviously I like to talk.
Yeah?
I would have taken the seal's tongue.
Oh, and
as a little offering, and see if he would have fell for that. Because what's the worst that can happen?
Well, we've seen the worst that could happen. Tuunbaq will do some major surgery to you if you're not too careful.
All right, I suppose. But I don't know if that was worth... I don't know if that was worth a shot, but I would have tried to get away with that.
Earlier, you mentioned that in this brief scene we see of Tuunbaq, he doesn't seem to have too many ill effects of being hit with a cannon last week.
Correct. Yeah, he seemed to be in pretty good shape. Now he was being filmed from his good side, so maybe that was
not his good sir, but his good side.
Right. So I assume he's got magical healing powers, or is it snow? He's just packed a lot of snow in there to collect the. I don't know.
He certainly hasn't had Botox from looking at that face. Poor
Tuunbaq.
All right, so that was Lady Silence. She's going to have a dramatic return later in the episode. But let's get back to the beginning. Here we have JFJ and the team, which includes Lieutenant Irving. Lieutenant Irving is the guy who caught Hickey and Gibson way back when.
Yeah.
Irving is saying, okay, these are the stores we have. This is what we've had. It's 2 weeks later. It is January of 1848.
All right.
We even see the wooden leg, which has been fashioned for Blanky to get around. He does do very well on this wooden leg.
Do you think that's a custom wooden leg or one they just had laying around?
That is a great question. I don't know. It definitely looks...
Take that, catfish. Take that.
It definitely looks like it works.
He looks great in it.
Based on the show. Now, as Irving is going through the supplies, he's talking about, look, we found all the spoiled food. We're getting rid of it. But this is how much we have. And he also mentions something that upsets JFJ. He's like, well, looking at our provisions, it'll last if we continue to have 116 men. I think that's the number he said.
Yeah.
And JFJ...
And he's counting Headless Hank.
Oh, boy.
Does he count?
I don't know, but
because I guarantee you someone is taking some of his rations. I guarantee you.
Poor guy who lost his head from the Royal Marines. But what do you think when Irving here says, well, if we have our current 116 men, should he have said, spoiler alert?
Well, I think, if I was him, I would say, look, I know this meeting was planned for 9 o'clock. And I had 116 men, but it's 10:30. Let me do a quick head count because maybe these numbers would be revised. My favorite thing about this group meeting, though, we've been talking about JFJ a little bit here, who I've always enjoyed. I've enjoyed throughout, but he probably thinks he gives great birthday presents, but he's like, no, we can't have 3/4 rations. No, we must have 80%. Yeah, so we're going up 5%. You're getting, Bubba, happy birthday. Here's 5% more salt beef than you would have had last week. Come on. Is that really... That's going to last them, an extra 5 days?
It doesn't sound like...
One day?
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah.
So are you saying because JFJ didn't want to cut the rations, possibly what was being suggested to him, that he's not being realistic, or is he just trying to keep the men's spirits up? Because it's still January. It is still the middle of winter. They've got to get on this walk. You would assume they can't even leave until it's got to be a bit warmer, right? Do you leave in March? Because to walk 800 miles, what's that going to be?
Right. Well, it did make me think just for a second, are they trying to, is it going to make him look like
the nice guy, or the...
Not a nice guy, but someone who doesn't really know what the hell they're talking about. Because, you're saying to someone, no, we can't go down all the way down to 75%. 80. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he sits down, and he's got this great mano-a-mano. With Blanky. If I ever have a family... and I'm not there. I'm traveling or I'm stuck at the airport. While my daughter has to go to prom.
All right.
I would want her date to have to meet Mr. Blanky before the prom.
To tell a story of somebody who didn't come back from prom, or I was this close to busting up in your skull with an axe.
There's absolutely nothing he could say that would sound good.
This is a great monologue by Ian Hart telling this story about...
He's so good, this guy.
He keeps saying, well, you read the book. The book. Do you really... Even when he gets done with the story, he says, okay, even one more day, I would have snapped. Mm-hmm. Are you going to court-martial me? That's when you know you've told a good story. Dang.
That is a good point. He's terrific. He's a survivor. Mm-hmm. Does he have any fingers? He's wearing the cast. I'm not sure if it's... I can't remember if he lost any fingers, but he lost a leg.
Oh, man,
he lost a couple fingers. And he's
even got some frostbite scars on his cheek, it looks like. Blanky does.
He's great.
But you were saying earlier that if JFJ is the command and he's the guy with the higher position, mm-hmm. he should be leaning on people like Blanky who've been here before.
Right. What's kind of interesting about Blanky is both Blanky and Crozier's indisposed at the moment. He's covered in his own turmoil. But and so really JFJ is really leaning on Blanky because Blanky has seen some stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think losing his leg to Tuunbaq, probably only the third or fourth worst thing that's happened to Blanky. It's not a big deal to him. So both he, but also by extension Crozier, have been through a ton of stuff.
Oh, they have. Yeah.
So it's kind of like you want. I've really enjoyed Crozier, and even though he is, a bit of a lush, it's kind of. You're looking forward to seeing him again, assuming he'll get back on his feet. When we do see him, he actually seems pretty good. He seems a lot better than what I thought.
Yeah, I want to talk about that scene a lot because if you're Crozier and your first steps away, your first kind of, let me get out of this room, suffering from the DTs, you end up at a party which turns out to be a kegger. Oh. Excuse me, not a kegger because of the way Blanky was drinking. A legger.
Hello.
Blanky drinking out of his own leg. That's probably not the best place to go when you're trying to sober up, huh?
Well, I would say yes, but I assume they were serving gin, which
right.
he's like, not a fan of. So he can definitely stay on the wagon.
While this story is going on of Blanky explaining to JFJ just how bad it was, it looks like a steward here on the Erebus is about to knock and go in, and then he overhears, and it's like, oh, crap. We are abandoning ships,
Blanky,
plural. Abandoning ships, plural.
Right. Well, he's like, well, I think first it was, oh, crap, Blanky might split my head open. Number one. Number two, oh yeah, there's stuff going on, and we don't need to spend too much time on it. But there's a cool scene later on with him sharing
a book,
sharing a book for to prepare someone.
Yeah, it looked like, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I believe that this steward and this guy he shared with the book with are kind of like a couple themselves.
Yeah,
it's like, listen, buddy, you're my man. You're my man. Read this because we're about to go on a walk. And this is something that you probably would want to keep secret. This is something like when you're abandoning ships and saying, we surrender to these elements.
Look, I would not want to walk in the freezing cold surrounded by polar bears from New York to Atlanta. Okay. However, if I'd been stuck...
Oh, yeah.
If I'd been stuck in a subway car...
Over a year.
For 2 years...
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, let's stretch the legs. Let's get the F out of here.
I want to say that Blanky's story is about an expedition from the guy, John Ross. But it was James Ross when Sir John Franklin's wife went and said, hey, you got to put out a rescue party to get our men. It was James Ross, the younger one, who said, if we haven't heard from them by 1850, I'll send a rescue crew. This is January of 1848.
Right.
And they are hitting the road. Now, you mentioned you've always liked JFJ.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to know your thought process. When JFJ, he goes down in his ship, he opens up this chest, and you're thinking, what's going on? And suddenly JFJ decides, it's time to visit Eyes Wide Shut.
It's time to,
you see these masks, and you're thinking... sex orgy.
Right.
What's going on?
It definitely caught me off guard. I mean, I'm not, this may sound like a joke, but I did actually think one of them was a Tuunbaq mask because just, it's a little...
it's white, it's right.
It's like, it's a little... But first off, so this is Sir John's trunk. Was this Sir John's secret trunk?
Oh, boy.
Was it, and look, I have not been invited to a lot of carnivals in the Arctic in the, mid-19th century. But some of that stuff, it was kind of like, I don't know what this party is going to be exactly.
Well, when I saw these masks and, I immediately thought Eyes Wide Shut. Mm-hmm. But I thought to myself, so this is where they got the name Carnival Cruises.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. It's kind of like, we want this cruise line. We want
party.
Well, it does create a little bit of excitement. I mean, I've been on a couple of Carnival Cruises, our new sponsor. We mentioned that on the
later in the episode. Later in the episode, the Carnival Cruises, they go on an excursion.
It is an excursion
to the Carnival 100 yards off the ship or so.
It's really great. You get to walk to Cuba. It's the best part.
I want to say that this carnival scene, it's great, but because I had this preconceived ideas of it from the books, I was a bit tough on it. Another reason why I was a bit tough on this episode is it starts with two stories. I think they're both great, but after Blanky's great story, we come back to the HMS Terror. Crozier is still suffering here, 2 weeks of sober, and his steward, a very nice guy we've been following for a bit, Jobson, tells another story. And I thought it was tough for an episode to start with kind of two stories, two kind of monologues in a row. Even this Jobson monologue is pretty great, if depressing, about a mom buys a ticket to like a show, almost a carnival for her kids. And then because it's so cheap, the bleachers collapse. She loses her arm. Oh, terrible.
And even she refused to marry Crozier. Now, I don't know if we skipped over this, but JFJ seemed to have a little bit of a dandruff issue going on.
Yeah, that's later on the episode when he's getting ready for the carnival. Yeah, he's bleeding from his his skull.
We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, maybe that's what caused the blood, is there was a blood had been in one of those masks.
Which could be the problem.
So Jobson tells his story.
Yeah.
Then who do we cut from? We cut from a really nice guy, Jobson, taking care of his captain. Mm-hmm. We cut to, here it comes,
good old
Mr. Hickey. Hickey,
Yeah.
sticky his finger in somebody's open and exposed braids.
It was that was fantastic.
I was joking that Hickey, he's got his fingers in everything, including this poor guy's braids.
Well, look, a ship, there's all sorts of bacteria. If you want to stay clean, you got to rinse off your fingers.
Oh, this was terrible.
In someone's sterile brain. Yeah, I did not know that guy was still alive. Last week, he was completely motionless in the way that the guy was talking to him.
Yeah, his fellow Royal Marine Tozer was talking to him, trying to cheer him up by telling him a story or something.
Yeah, he needs a better story.
Oh, boy. Can you believe this guy is still alive? What would you call somebody in this state? I want to call it a coma, but it's not a coma. It's...
I think I would call it a vegetative.
Yeah, oh
state.
my God. But then to have Hickey sticking his finger in your braids. Oh,
maybe
terrible.
Maybe it's a vegetative dip state. Sorry. My favorite thing is, though, and there's a little bit of a run here. Mm-hmm. Well, first, you were talking about this earlier, and it was almost when it happened. It was actually pretty funny. Like, we go from Hickey jamming his fingers in the brain.
And the closed captioning says, what's it say?
Oh, well, that too, but just the cut to poor Jacko.
Poor Jacko eating Goldner's fine veal cutlets. Oh.
The finest veal cutlets. But no, so yeah, when we had Hickey digging for gold and Jacko digging for seconds.
For this lead-tainted food. Oh.
And then later on, when we've got, Lady Silence.
Eating the seal guts.
Yeah.
Oh.
It all sounded like one thing. Squelching. Which I thought was fantastic.
Now, this episode, I always love the terror. Maybe a reason why I've only gone 7 out of 10 is I haven't found many ice cold disses in the episode. I almost want to say, so far in the stuff we've reviewed, the biggest ice cold was Captain Crozier doing it to himself when he said the infamous line. Jobson was saying, I've been through a lot of turmoil, and Crozier says, I got turmoil all over you and most of this bed in the last hour. He should have looked in the mirror and then said to himself, ice cold. Diss of himself.
Would have been a diss. Hell of a diss.
Do you want to pour one out for Jacko, who really goes out as a mad monkey here? Oh, going nuts from eating this lead. And Mr. Good Sir, how do you feel about Good Sir? Because he's one of the guys the show wants you to like.
Yeah.
He seems to do everything right. He has the right ideas. He's nice as can be. But he did some animal testing right here. That would not be approved of.
Well, Mr. Good Sir actually founded PETA. A lot of people don't know that. No. I think he's doing it in those times and in those days, I think that he's doing it. He's got a great reason to do it.
Oh, he does have a great reason.
So he has to be doing that. But, we don't really... this is one of the things about this show where you think of all the crazy, creepy things they could have subjected us to. Mm-hmm. One, we didn't really spend much time at all with Crozier while he's got the shakes and he's sobering up and he's screaming and yelling. Mm-hmm. None of that. We get none of that. It looks like he's basically
on the road to recovery by now.
Worst of it. Yeah, so we don't get any of that fun stuff. And then also we missed out on Crazy Monkey. We missed out on Crazy Monkey in a confined space.
Oh man! So
there could have been like a little bit of Monkey Shines action going on. I don't know what, but
as well as. But speaking, you ready? Speaking of monkey business, transition.
Oh,
it cuts from Jacko's slow descent to death to somebody up to some monkey business, Mr. Hickey. He has to know everything. I was
tricky. Icky Hickey.
For sure. So he comes up to Gibson. He wants to know what's going on. Gibson knows that they've been keeping track and finding out, they're keeping track of how much food they have. Hickey, while he's talking to Gibson is putting away silverware. Hickey, you got to watch it close. Hickey pockets a knife from the silverware. That knife, theoretically, is what he uses at the end of the episode to free most of the prisoners, except one closest to him.
He was freed. Look, he saved him from the fire, okay? That's all that counts. That guy did not burn alive. That's all that counts.
But Hickey is smart. He figured out, wait a minute, it's not just they're counting stores. They're trying to find out how many how many crates we have, and because he's figured it out. We're abandoning ship.
We're getting out of here.
How do you feel about Hickey? Because it feels like like I said, he's smart. He can figure things out. But on the flip side, he's slimy, and he just is weaselly. What do you think? How have you felt about him over all these 6 episodes?
Well, he's real weaselly, and after last week where it seemed like they kind of had a little détente, with Tuunbaq, they got. I mean, they chased him away, and in those moments, there's always something really fun about. Okay, well, there's one monster who's outside, but the real monster is inside, and so.
That was a bit of a spoiler alert for Ridley Scott's Alien, too. The Beast was terrible. Obviously, the Alien monster was terrible. But there was also the synthetic, what were they called?
Lance Henriksen.
No, he was the second one. They were the the robots.
The robots.
Who were also just as evil and just as bad.
Right. And so I thought that's where, I thought that's what Hickey was going to turn out to be. I mean, he's so, even though, we've seen him, he's had obviously some warm personal relationships, but he's also manipulated people. He doesn't really seem to care about anyone, but himself.
No.
And so you think, okay, well, there's no, in terms of what he's going to do, but it turns out he's not the worst person on the ship. So
we'll get to Dr. Stanley Steamer in a bit. I love that name, Mork. So good.
We will get there.
There is a brief scene of Hickey trying to once again rally his troops, get his men, warn people that they are going to be walking. But he sees one of his former conspirators who helped grab Lady Silence. They're having a talk about, well, Hickey didn't turn everybody in. That was good. Right. But this guy who did receive the lashes, he didn't receive the punishment as a boy, but he did get the lashes, and he accepted them. He's like, okay, Captain Crozier gave me this, but it's a way to wipe my record clean. He was almost saying, Hickey, I'm not on your team anymore.
Right.
And boy.
And Hickey doesn't seem to be able to. I mean, last week he tried to pull something in
right, with Good Sir, yeah.
Good Sir was like, does that ever work? And this guy's not really. So it does make me wonder a little bit, what is Hickey trying to pull off? Because, okay, he's going to run away on his own. Like, okay, congrats. You get to walk 800 miles on your own. I mean, I don't really know what he's trying to get out of it. And maybe that's just his nature, but he's obviously very smart and very capable, and he can figure stuff out, and he's a quick thinker. And
I almost feel like
if there's a fire, he'll stab somebody.
I almost feel like what I would take from the show so far is that Hickey is like a voice of dissent. And it's a kind of sneaky dissent because it's not so much outwardly dissent so much as, I want you with me. Yes, you report to the captain. Yes, you listen to JFJ or Crozier or whomever. But I really want you to be with me. And the way things just keep getting worse and worse for our guys here on these ships, that's not very good.
Right.
One guy who I put on the Double B Bubba boat way back when was Mr. Collins. I always liked Mr. Collins mainly because when the first guy fell off the crow's nest and fell into the ice-cold water, Collins was like, he was spotting them. He wanted to jump in and save them.
Yeah.
Later on, when he was in the scuba gear, which went down to saw the ice away from the propeller on the Erebus, he freaked out and he saw that guy in... he had a vision, whether it was real or true or not.
Yeah.
He saw that guy under the ice. It freaked him out. This episode, we find out it has really affected him. It's like shaking him to his core. And he goes to see, boy, the worst Dr. A-hole you ever could.
Yeah.
Dr. Stanley. And so get ready for another ice cold.
Oh, man.
It's not the same, but if you're once a jerk, always a jerk. And I almost want to tip my cap to Dr. Stanley because Collins comes in and he goes, oh, it's you. I was looking for Dr. Good Sir.
Yeah.
Stanley instead corrects him and he says, you mean Mr. Good Sir?
Ooh.
Ice cold.
It was pretty rough. Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah.
So Stanley is Dr. Stanley Esquire, is sitting there, scribbling in his notebook, and there are some hammocks, and I can't tell if the people in the hammocks are dead or alive.
From what I could tell, it wasn't perfect. I thought just looking at some of the people behind him in hammocks, maybe they had some frostbite, maybe they had something.
That one guy near the door looks dead. And
Well, could be. What if he's dying from lead poisoning, too? What if that's what they're trying to visually tell us from all these people in this sick bay?
Well, that's not where I'm going to go for some medical advice. Okay.
Would you go to Dr. Stanley for any if you wouldn't invite him to a wedding? You really wouldn't. This guy, now maybe this is us with modern eyes looking back on a doctor in the 1848, but it is obvious that Mr. Collins is having emotional trouble. And Dr. Stanley, before he does kind of warm up and try to give him some, hey, it's a carnival, go and have some fun, his first thing was, I'm a doctor of medicine, dude.
Right.
What's your deal? I deal with scurvy. Quit your belly aching, Collins. I mean, I last week I joked he didn't have a bedside manner. He had a bedpan manner, and it's like even worse. But I want to say the show tricked me because he does have a little bit of a turn. He does try to.
He does warm up later.
Yeah. But now yeah, he really warms up good. Old Dr. Stanley does. But they fooled me a bit because here he is at the end of the scene with Mr. Collins. It is a bit, as weak as an attempt it is to cheer him up. It is a bit like, hey, go enjoy the carnival. It's a party. Go have a party. Cheer up.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to take anything from the fact that Dr. Stanley is looking at this drawing of, we believe, his daughter? And is that when he truly gives up hope? Like he's been thinking about his daughter. Later in the episode, Mr. Goodsir is going to come to him and say, look, dude, we got to let people know. You can't eat this lead food.
Yeah.
He also knows that they're going to be walking soon. And is that why he went nuts? I have to be honest, I don't know if the show gave us a good explanation for why he suddenly went nuts and burnt himself alive and took many people out with him. I mean,
or definitely tried to. Doesn't look. I mean, he did a ton of damage to stuff. I don't know how much stuff they need, but I mean, watching it, it was revealing to me, to the extent it was revealing about kind of his emotional state. It was that he's also homesick and all that. I didn't think that. Oh yeah, he's nuts by this. I mean, the fact that he's talking to three corpses in the hammocks might have clued me in, but no, I was definitely not thinking about that.
Oh, so good. I'm so tough on this episode, but I just want to keep talking about the rising tension. We've already talked about that scene where Tuunbaq shows up with Lady Silence cutting off her own tongue and how tense that was. But if the episode started slow, it really starts to pick up at about the halfway point. Mr. Goodsir is called by DeVos. DeVoe. I forget what this guy's name is, but I'm trying so hard to get these names. DeVoe says, hey, Jacko's going nutto. This is a R.I.P. Jacko.
Well, what did Goodsir do? Goodsir was like, all right, you've done with that, Ken? All right, I'm going to take some notes. See you later. Or he gave him back to the crew? What he was expecting something to happen.
Well,
shouldn't he have kept an eye on his experiment?
Well, how about this? Maybe at the very least you say, this monkey might have some meat on it. All our other meat is spoiled or tainted with lead.
That's true.
We fed this monkey lead. We can't eat this monkey either.
Look, a couple of monkey drumsticks at the carnival are, there's nothing more fun to do at the Arctic.
And so we're getting to this cruise excursion, the trip to the carnival, and Crozier's coming out of his stupor. Yeah. It is all coming together. You knew something not good was going to happen. You haven't read the books like I have, but you knew there was trouble coming, didn't you? Yeah, no, I probably, if I was Crozier, I probably would have just been like, all right, I'm gonna chill here. I'm just gonna read. I don't know if I would have. I was glad to see it. I did notice that before he went into his shakedown mode, he talked about how basically don't listen to me if I beg you to give me booze or whatever. Don't listen to me. I won't be back until you see me on the deck in my dress uniform or my. That's what uniform. He said. Yeah. And then he's like, "Yeah, give me my overalls." So I was a little. That made me a little nervous about what his plan was, what he was going to do. But there's some business. There's some bring it. Monkey business that we have to get to before he gets to the party. Well, let's get to it. Good Sir, that's not Doctor, that's Mr. Good Sir, goes to Dr. Stanley pre-steaming, and he's like, this has been constant ingestion of lead-tainted food for years, because they've been trapped on the ice 2 years. He's saying, Young, the guy who died, the first one to die, coughing of what we thought was consumption, this could have been what killed him.
Yeah.
It's going to get worse and worse. We have to let everybody know immediately, and I think by this point, in hindsight, you look at Dr. Stanley Steamer's face, and you know, it's over. He's checked out. He's not on the cruise anymore.
I have a kind of a confession to make.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, I was on a Carnival cruise.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I thought I would take some drugs that are meant to be prescription drugs recreationally. And let's just say they had an impact.
This is being recorded, Mork. Be careful here.
They had an impact for more than 4 hours.
Uh-oh.
So I went to go see Dr. Stanley. And let's just say I'll never have that problem again.
No.
That's
Yes,
right.
this is such trouble. Is this a flashback to Tobias Menzies' role on Rome? The fact that he dresses up as a gladiator. When I saw him holding up
Yes.
the dresses to himself earlier, I thought James Fitzjames hosts What Not to Wear.
Right. Yeah, there was definitely, like, for a moment, it's sort of like, is he judge? You know, has he become the Tim Gunn of the trip? Is he judging everyone? But no, he's wearing a Roman centurion outfit. He played he played
Brutus on HBO series Rome.
A2. So
Maybe this would be a good time. Sorry to interrupt you there, Mork.
No,
Maybe
interrupt.
this would be a good time to get your verdict on JFJ's plan. He heard Blanky's story about how the only thing that kind of kept the men together on that, at that time, 300-mile walk was the fact that they all cared about each other.
Right.
And so this is his plan to get everybody to bond together because they're going to have to walk 800 miles, as we keep saying. And this is his plan. This will do it. We know it ended up terrible. But did you like the plan, even if the results were terrible? What do you think? Is this Monday morning quarterback, or was it always a bad idea? What do you think?
Well, I think if it was a 5% better carnival, no, I think it was a solid plan. I wish, we were sort of talking about this earlier, where I wish that, in these 2 weeks we'd have a little bit more time to see, JFJ in charge.
As command, yeah.
And how is he doing things differently than Crozier? And is Crozier going to not like it or like it? All that kind of crap would have been fun to see. And so we don't get too much of a sense of, I guess, what type of decision, is this a good or is this a bad decision? Obviously it doesn't. I think it's not the party of the year.
Maybe this is me having a JFJ bias, but I think it actually could have worked if Stanley didn't go nuts.
Well, look,
because
say
Crozier showing up, and this scene, I gotta be honest. Once again, Crozier is recovering from alcohol. He's going and seeing the crew entirely drunk. He's got to get away from that stuff, even though somebody throws it in his face.
For a second, I thought he was actually hallucinating this. He was actually back in bed.
Yeah, it has that feel of it, doesn't it?
Some of this stuff was like, what are they doing?
Right, and then we just had the great scene where I said it wasn't a kegger, it was a legger. Blanky drinking out of his leg. Damn.
Good old, but Blanky always kind of, would do that. Blanky, that's how he takes his tea. He makes a legger out of everything. But one thing, just to back up to JFJ's decision,
Sure, sorry.
I would posit this. We've known each other for a while. You and I and Catfish, we've known each other for a while. And I guarantee you, if we ever bring up a past social gathering that we've been to, it's usually one that didn't turn out well. But yet, we can still talk about it years, even decades later. So say you're about 250 miles into this walk from frozen New York to frigid Atlanta, and your spirits are down. But you can turn to the guy next to you and you're like, hey, remember when we went to that crazy party and that doctor set himself on fire and tried to kill us all? Wasn't that funny? And you'd have a good laugh and you'd keep walking.
That would always come up in the Facebook timeline. Remember 5 years ago today, you went to that terrible carnival.
So I think JFJ's decision may not have paid off right away, but it will have dividends.
Okay, all right. Crozier, like I said, he even gets a drink thrown in his face. People are recognizing him. They're like, wait, the captain.
It's probably gin, though, so what? He doesn't care.
No, he doesn't. Hickey, there was a brief scene of him already telling people, yeah, we're going to abandon ship, Mm-hmm. But this party, it is good for men to let off steam, I think.
There is some craziness going on, though.
Yeah, they've gone too far. They've had too much to drink. There's a good chance that Dr. Stanley Steamer blew all their remaining alcohol. That's one way you could get everybody to sober up.
That would definitely not help. But yeah, someone's firing off guns. Mm-hmm. Also, one little quick note about this is that it seems like JFJ is wearing his particular helmet so people can't see the blood that's
dripping
out of his
skull. Oh, yeah. So terrible. There's even, is it a hot tub? I mean, I know this sounds ridiculous, but they brought the guy without his skull. They brought him to the party, too.
Well, they didn't want him to feel left out.
And it's when he gets to these guys in the hot tub that sober Crozier, even he says, okay, this is too much. Yeah. We've got to get everybody out. JFJ apologizes and says, yes, it went too far. Crozier decides, okay, this is the time we're going to have to let people know that we're walking.
Right.
I think it's a strong moment. It shows that Crozier is back.
Yeah.
I don't know what to blame for poor JFJ for it going so wrong and getting too much out of hand. But it could have worked. Once again, I think there's a small chance that I don't
think you can blame I don't think you can blame the unintended consequences of this party on JFJ. I mean, okay, there was the hot tub and there was some people in costumes and there was definitely a little tomfoolery and probably a little grab ass going on. If that's the worst of it, that's okay. So it does. So Hickey, you can't pin it all on him.
Where exactly was Hickey urinating right there at the end, where they said, "Hey, this isn't an outhouse. Go outside if you're going to urinate." Now it's so freezing cold outside. I might be tempted to.
Oh yeah.
Relieve myself inside
for sure.
But of course, Hickey's always in the right place at the right time. He is sent outside by DeVoe again. I believe this is DeVoe sending Hickey out. And so Hickey is not in there where, let's just get to it. Stanley Steamer goes off his rocker.
Sure, but the way...
Takes everybody down. You could tell when they do a close-up of all the liquor being let out of these casks and kegs, you think it might be Hickey doing it.
Well, the way that they kind of shot it is he's wandering off, he's all alone. Some guy just reprimands him for taking a leak, and then so I really thought until I saw who it was, I thought that was Hickey who was preparing this little impromptu barbecue.
Oh man, so terrible, so horrific. I think maybe the producers of the show want us to feel horrific because if there weren't enough signs of trouble, the first thing that comes in is a bleeding because she doesn't have a tongue anymore. A lady silence. That is just a...
she's not that silent. She's kind of moaning and groaning.
Oh, I mean, she looks terrible. Oh my God, this is poor Lady Silence. What happened to her?
She doesn't look great.
And you just know. Once again, even if you're not scared, hopefully you're feeling this tension. Like it's trouble. It's trouble. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. And this just blew me away. This is so strong. And so I'm going to spoil one small element of the book, about this scene from the book. Is as horrific as this is, guess who also shows up right when everything's really turning horrific?
Oh,
TB.
Tuunbaq.
Tuunbaq also shows up. And so it was so horrific, so tense and crazy in the books that the fact that TB didn't show up here, I shouldn't let the book make me judge the show, but that is one of the reasons why. Because, you see how horrific and insane this is.
Oh, yeah.
And then Tuunbaq showed up too. It was crazy. I don't think the show needed Tuunbaq for most people who hadn't read the books, mainly because this is just crazy.
Yeah.
Good Sir's running to the lady, and this way, Crozier's like, stop him. Stanley.
Oof. Oh. And then he sets himself on fire, and he just starts walking towards him. It kind of reminded me of, this was like a really scary version of The Princess Bride, the Dread Pirate Roberts, when Andre the Giant had lit himself on fire, or lit the cloak, on fire. But yeah, this is insane, and all of these things, I mean, a lot of the imagery, you're seeing someone who is probably the most, who had himself, the most, Steamer was the most composed, probably of most of the men.
He always came across that way.
Yeah.
He came across like a jerk, but yeah.
To see him lose it in the worst possible way is going to terrify these other guys.
And to sabotage it and trap them all in this burning tent, this is ridiculous. This is terrible. Hickey, let's talk about Hickey.
Get that dinner knife.
In that dinner knife that he stole earlier, on one hand, he is saving everybody, but help me out. Is it Dr. McDonald he stabs? Who's the guy he stabs to open up the canvas and let people out of this?
Well, he
arson-filled tent.
Oh, I completely let him off the hook. He's yelling, stand back, I mean, he's yelling, I'm going to cut the thing.
But you couldn't stab like lower and start cutting there and cut up.
Who knows? I mean, it's such a crazy tense thing. There's a thing on fire. He still probably has to pee. So all this craziness is happening. I don't fault him at all for taking out whoever he.
Yeah, it looks like it's Dr. McDonald who he kills, and Dr. McDonald is trying to get up there and leave everybody out. Oh, people are catching on fire themselves. This is horrific, and once again, it has that extra added horrific thing in the novel version of this.
To be fair, though, I mean, some of those costumes were so poorly done; they really should have been burned.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
That is not an ice cold; that's a burn, literally.
Ice cold burn. Yeah, he's saying, "Give him room, stand back." So he's definitely off the hook.
So. They've been talking all day. This was Sunrise coming back here in January. It can't last long, but you see how many men have been lost. JFJ is going to stay out there till they've all been given a name. Each victim has been identified.
Right.
Oh, this is horrific. The Union Jack destroyed. It is time to abandon these boats and get the hell out of here, because
one boat they don't need to abandon because it burned to a crisp.
Yeah, one little rowboat. Yeah, you're right. This is just tragic. This is terrible. You see the faces on everybody, and
well, Mr. Blanky is just looking around, being, I've seen worse. He's not that impressed.
Oh man,
no, it is. It's nuts. There's a little bit of business going on in terms of what's next. And it really does feel like Crozier's, in a weird way, I mean, this is what, and JFJ does actually, he doesn't give him credit to his face, but it does say he was totally right. We should have listened to him. We didn't. He was completely right. And there's almost like a little bit of, maybe part of why Crozier is so calm now is because he's been proven right. Where it's kind of like, okay, he was correct, and now he knows that whatever he's going to do, he has to do it his way, moving forward, because they should have done it. I was a little the
sunset, the sunrise and the sunset,
because for me, what was confusing, because it looked like the sun rose and set from the same place, and I don't know much about the North Pole, but I think they still have east and west. I don't know, but. This was...
So 10 out of 10, though, still? After reviewing it again, you're still 10 out of 10?
You're still 7? You're still 7 out of 10?
I think last week so far might have been my favorite episode so far. So is this your favorite episode of the 6 we've gotten so far?
Yeah, I really did. I really did think it was great. I mean, the thing that's tricky, and you've read the book, and I'm sure a lot of our double L's...
Loyal listeners.
Thank you. Well, your double L's, rather. I'm sure a lot of folks have read the book, and Tuunbaq is great, but it's what really makes this show so fun in the book, I imagine so fun and so scary is, the impact that it has and how people act differently because of it. And so Tuunbaq is he's a very kind of, small presence in this episode, and it was really about these guys. Yeah. And Tuunbaq learned, look, I'll leave them alone, and they'll kill each other way quicker than I ever could. So Tuunbaq is learning.
All right, let's get to some of our feedback. Some of the feedback team. And this first one up is from Vernon Wright. What did Vernon say, Mork?
Oh, man. At Vernon_Wright80. Just caught up with #the Terror Iceboat face, just so I can listen to the podcast. Never read the book.
Oh, great.
Very cool. On episode 5, and so far, not too bad.
Good. Okay.
At Musical Concepts, at CGG. I look forward to upcoming podcast. Cheers from Strigoi Team 7 member and a fellow #GhostBeater. Wow.
So, Strigoi Team 7, that was our Double P podcast coverage of The Strain, which is over. If you
How
somehow
do you think
get
the
into
Master
The Strain
would do on the boat?
You know what? As incompetent, they would all have. There would be they would each have plans, and none of them would work if it was.
Do you think that Hickey would be a good father to Zach 2.0?
Oh, man, this is some deep Strain cuts here, listeners. If somehow you watched FX's The Strain, download all our Got Your Milk FX's The Strain podcast.
You poor people.
All right, let's get to Matt Foster, who's at FatMoster on Twitter. He just said he doesn't have stars, so he's not able. That's why he's not able to listen to all the podcasts here on the Double P podcast. Sometimes we cover a show, Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Oh, right, because this is on AMC.
On Stars, so he said that's why he didn't do that one. He said that Catfish, when last week we were talking about JFJ checking people's names, it was the Devil's Hands is the idol's playground.
Right.
Matt Foster does his own podcast. We want to give them a shout. They're called the Dropping Knowledge Podcast. I tend to see them on Spotify. I want to make sure that's correct. Spotify, I believe it's on. And they talk about idioms of the English language, and they might cover Devil's Hand is the idle playground.
Oh, that's awesome.
Speaking also of last week's episode, Susan Dunkel said her rating for First Shot of Winter, episode 5, is 10 triple M's.
Triple M's?
Muddled-minded monkeys.
Aww.
She said it was her favorite episode. Susan, once again, contact us. We want to know how you feel about episode 6. Why don't you read this next one, mainly because I'm afraid I'll mispronounce Double L's name.
Agrippa, who was one of the characters in Rome. Agrippa Maxentius. I don't actually know by the last name, though. I love this. You guys sound like Scott Aukerman and Eastside Dave from the Ron and Fest show combined. Well, that is very high praise. I will not tell Catfish that you said nice things about him. Really interesting how close your voices are. Haha, emoji. Franklin Expedition.
Yeah, let's get to some of these feedback about the real-life history of the Franklin Expedition. Larry at 1980 wrote, I wonder at what point did the crew realize that the boats were stuck? Mm-hmm. And so, 2 years on the ice. We've heard stories of the Ross expedition where it was 3 months on the ice. The Terror itself, the boat in real life, in an earlier expedition had been stuck 10 months on Hudson Bay ice. I think what's funny is who's to say, because these boats were made and they were normally provisioned to last so long.
Right. Yeah, no, that is funny.
Sorry. Okay, I'll come up with better adjectives next time.
No, I'm kidding. It's like it's like, guys, we need to let's give ourselves 5% more salt beef because we're getting stuck,
right? And
half you people are going to get eaten by Tuunbaq.
Mike R says the best book to date about the Franklin expedition in series is a book, North with Franklin. It is written as a bunch of diary entries with the perspective from JFJ taking actual letters he sent to his sister from the Erebus in 1845.
How long did those letters take to get there?
Oh man, you want to? Yeah, right. Absolutely. When it absolutely positively has to to get there,
is the mail here
over
yet?
A year?
Nope.
All right, so we got some feedback about our boy Hickey, about Good Sir, and Lady Silence. Why don't you read this first one from somebody whose username is She Can Do It.
She can do it. Hickey has a low opinion of the Eskimo, which a lot of people find offensive.
Yeah, so, but it's what the show refers to it, so.
I know, because he has a Euro view that the Eskimo is other, and so that means dark and evil. He does see the beast, but all the capturing and readiness to kill was overdoing it. Let's not forget the other deplorable shish he did in the earlier epi. It is pretty ironic, too, when Goodser makes the point that Englishmen do not behave in the way Hickey has.
Oh, boy.
Ha! All right.
Now, that is a good
Let's
point.
talk about some drunk boating.
Well, okay, yeah, let's get to it. But I wanted to say to She Can Do It that in one of the behind-the-scenes things where they interview the actor who portrays Hickey, he says in that scene, I believe it was 2 episodes ago, where he got kind of like a view of Tuunbaq through the snow, is that the way he took it is that his character saw Tuunbaq, and Tuunbaq may have seen him. And there was this kind of thing of like, they recognize something of each other in themselves.
Yeah, Tuunbaq's like, I'm not messing with that dude.
So we talked about drunk boating, and Morgan Kean wrote this email. She says, I went back and watched the previous episodes with my husband, who is a hunter, because I was so reactionary. I actually missed the darn bear, like in that scene with Hickey, because she's, too reactionary. The shadowy evidence before this last episode was in the season opener with Lieutenant Gore. Then we see Hickey on the deck. The white-on-white Tuunbaq was easy to miss. Crozier knows he's got to get this crap together. And theoretically, this episode shows him getting his act together. She writes, Crozier is an Arctic veteran with Sir John Ross and has no doubt been in similar bad situations with the Terror. Earlier, ice-cold comment to Sir John about barely surviving, which is foreshadowing the, quote, desperate men are like when JFJ brings up melodramas.
Right.
Crozier's wallowed enough. He's been drunk for too long, and now Blanky will lose part of his leg. That's enough. It's time for him to sober up. I still stand by Crozier's knowledge of sailing in ice and that he will get his drunk butt out of the cups and back to duty. He's her captain on, we'll call it, the Morgan motorboat.
Okay.
The Kean... Oh, I can't think of a boat that begins with Z, but...
yeah, I don't know.
All right. We sometimes joke that it's not just we love the Terror and ice cold. We've said hashtag Team Tuunbaq. So somebody called Bucket on YouTube said Team Tuunbaq. We also had Bo, who wanted to say the CGI Tuunbaq wasn't the greatest, but by far it wasn't the worst. He says it was good enough and he enjoyed it. He called it a very creepy bear.
Okay. All right. That's totally fair. Maestro 4202. I'm a little mixed on the Tuunbaq reveal.
Okay.
CGI was good enough, but too much of a gorilla face compared to what I got from the book.
That's a good call. Yeah, it's definitely more gorilla than bear. Good call.
Yeah, it's a nice gorilla. Frank.18 says, I think the producers are going for an odd human element to convey malevolent intelligence. It's not a bear, it's something in between. The neck is a big deal in the book. Maybe it didn't work visually. Crozier.
Okay. So then Frank Dodd wrote this great, I almost want to call it an Abbott and Costello scene between Crozier and Lady Silence. So you ready, Mork? Why don't you be Crozier?
Okay. What's hunting us?
Tuunbaq.
It's too late to turn back. We're iced in for the winter. What is hunting us?
Tuunbaq.
We can't, woman. What is this thing?
Tuunbaq.
I need a drink or 7.
Oh, and scene.
Nice.
And I went, it's too late to Tuunbaq now. I believe that's Lady Silence tongue. Everybody who listens to this podcast, we always get some notes that are like, why are these guys so silly? We're just silly people. We apologize.
We're afraid of ice gorillas. That's why. I mean, come on.
All right, so that's it for this week. The whole gang should be back next Monday night. That's when we record these, when we'll be talking about Episode 7, which will be entitled, let's get to it real quick, Episode 7, Horrible from... How do you like this title, Mork?
I love it.
Horrible from Supper.
I'm in.
So next week, as the men begin their long march south, shocking events underscore how vulnerable and exposed their situation has become.
If anyone, I think this is a time when folks need to adjust their expectations because,
you think, well, they've abandoned those ice trap ships. Everything's good now.
Well, okay, let's see. We've lost our captain.
Mm-hmm. We lost a couple of doctors.
One guy got his leg ripped off. One guy got half of his skull ripped off. Let's see here.
All our food is spoiled or contaminated with lead.
Our food is spoiled. We've been stuck here like sitting ducks for 2 years, basically. I mean, I think at that point it's okay to take a glasses half empty view of the world. And if not the whole world, then just the Arctic.
Oh, man.
Just the Arctic.
Mork, how can people find you on social media?
Oh, they can find me on Twitter at Extraordinary. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the final R. And I know that if I go to either Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter or YouTube, what do I need to look for?
Look for me, Bubba. My handle is Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on all that crazy stuff.
All that crazy stuff.
Isaiah, go to that Facebook page. Make me happy, people. Give me some Facebook likes. Give us some Facebook follows. And we'll see you next time on Ice Cold. Man, I still... You know what? Dr. Stanley Steamer, that's one for the ages.
He earned it. He earned it the hard way. Hard way. Hard way. Hard way. Hard way.